Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into, well, maybe a slightly technical topic, but it's absolutely foundational if you're working with modern cloud apps. We're talking Azure Compute. We've got a stack of sources here, all breaking down Microsoft Azure's core computational power.
And our mission, really to demystify the three main models: infrastructure as a service, IaaS,
Right.
platform as a service, PaaS, and serverless computing. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding why these things even exist and, the problems they're actually solving for businesses and for developers too.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here isn't just like the different models of VMs, of AS with Azure App Service, serverless with Azure Functions. It's how they offer such different levels of control and management. It really comes down to flexibility. You can pick the exact compute model you need for a specific job, or even mix and match them, which is quite powerful. Okay, let's unpack that flexibility idea. Before Azure Compute, managing your own servers, that was, well, it was a huge headache, wasn't it? Costly, slow, inflexible. So what problems did these cloud services actually step in to solve?
Exactly. That's the core question. Before the cloud, running your own physical servers was just a massive burden. You had huge upfront costs for hardware.
Right, the capital expenditure.
Yeah, and then constant maintenance, OS patching, figuring out scaling for peak times, and often having expensive machines just sitting idle.
Wasted resources.
Totally. So IaaS, with virtual machines, it basically just wiped out the need to manage physical boxes at all.
Okay, that's a big step.
Huge. Then PaaS took it further. It started automating the infrastructure management things like patching, updates, even scaling, letting developers just focus on writing their code.
More focus on the application itself.
Exactly. And then serverless, well, that flipped the model again. It tackles that resource underutilization problem head on by only running code when it's actually triggered, which can drastically cut costs.
So together, they kind of removed those big upfront investments and made deploying things much, much simpler.
Precisely. They turned infrastructure from this fixed, heavy cost center into more of a flexible, on-demand utility.
Okay, this is getting interesting. Let's dive into the models themselves. IaaS, PaaS, serverless. How do they actually work? And maybe more importantly, how do they feel different when you're, say, a developer using them?
Good question. Let's start with IaaS infrastructure as a service using virtual machines.
Okay.
This one gives you the most control. Think of it like getting the raw building blocks. You get customizable compute instances, a Windows VM, a Linux VM.
Your choice.
Your choice. Perfect for maybe migrating legacy apps or running software that needs very specific OS configurations. You choose the OS, memory, CPU. You configure the networking. It's very similar to having your own server just running in Azure's data center.
But you still manage the OS, right?
Yeah.
Patching and all
Yeah.
that.
You do. That's the trade-off for control. You handle OS updates, security patches, but crucially, you typically use managed disks. That's Azure's storage for VMs. It handles the underlying storage resilience and performance for you.
Got it. So control, but with some Azure help on the storage side. What about PaaS then?
Right. PaaS platform as a service, Azure App Service is a prime example. This simplifies things significantly. It's like moving into a fully serviced apartment instead of building a house.
Huh. Okay. I like that analogy.
It's a managed environment, ideal for web apps, APIs, mobile backends. With PaaS, Azure handles the underlying infrastructure, the OS, the patching, the scaling, the network configuration.
So you just deploy your code.
Pretty much. You deploy your code like a .NET app, Node.js, Python, whatever, and Azure takes care of the rest. It even offers neat features like deployment slots.
Ah, yes, for zero downtime updates.
Exactly. You can deploy a new version to a staging slot, test it, and then swap it into production instantly. And monitoring with application insights is really key here to see how your app is actually performing.
Makes sense. Less control than IaaS, but way less management overhead. Which brings us to serverless, Azure Functions.
Yeah, serverless. This takes abstraction to the extreme. The infrastructure is basically invisible to you.
How does that work?
Your code runs in small units, functions only when triggered by an event. That event could be an HTTP request, a new message in a queue, or maybe a file being uploaded to blob storage.
Blob storage, that's Azure's object storage, right, for files and stuff.
Correct. So it's perfect for short-running, event-driven tasks, like resizing an image when it's uploaded or processing data from an IoT device. The killer feature: you only pay for the actual compute time your function runs. Milliseconds, often.
Wow. So potentially very cost-effective. But are there downsides? I've heard about cold starts.
That's the main one, yes. If your function hasn't run for a while, there can be a small delay, the cold start latency the first time it's invoked again, while the platform provisions resources. And functions usually have execution time limits too.
Okay, so it's a trade-off again. Super cost efficient and scalable for the right tasks. But maybe not for long-running processes or things needing instant response after idle periods.
Precisely. It's about picking the right tool.
So tying this together, you might use IaaS for that old, tricky custom app. PaaS is maybe your go-to for standard web applications. And serverless shines for those specific, event-driven, glue code-type tasks.
Exactly. And often you'll see them used together in a single solution. Plus, they all integrate with Azure Resource Manager, which gives you that consistent way to manage everything: deployment, permissions, tagging.
Yeah, that unified management layer is pretty important. And what about best practices? We touched on managed disks for IaaS, deployment slots for PaaS. Anything else key?
Definitely. For IaaS, besides managed disks, picking the right size VM is critical to avoid overspending. For PaaS, leveraging those deployment slots and really digging into application insights for monitoring.
And serverless.
Designing for statelessness is key.
Right.
Functions should ideally not rely on state from previous invocations, and keeping them short-running.
And costs. We mentioned serverless costs, but managing costs across the board must be crucial.
Absolutely vital.
Right.
Features like reserved instances for VMs, where you commit for 1 or 3 years for a big discount, or the newer Azure Savings Plans, which offer similar discounts, but with more flexibility across compute services.
Right, for predictable workloads.
Yes, and constantly reviewing your usage in Azure Cost Management. You have to be mindful, especially with auto-scaling features. Don't just set and forget.
Good advice. So it really comes down to understanding these trade-offs, doesn't it? Control versus simplicity with IaaS and PaaS, and then serverless offering that extreme scalability and potential cost efficiency, but with its own constraints like cold starts and time limits.
That's the heart of it. Understanding those trade-offs lets you build solutions that are not just functional, but also robust, cost-effective, and importantly, agile.
The right tool for the job, or maybe the right combination of tools.
Exactly. The real power often comes not just from picking one, but knowing how to weave IaaS, PaaS, and serverless together effectively within a larger application architecture. That unlocks possibilities beyond what any single model can do alone.
And that's our deep dive into Azure Compute. We've seen how IaaS, PaaS, and serverless provide this incredibly flexible, scalable framework. You can run almost anything in the cloud now, from ancient legacy apps to cutting-edge, event-driven microservices.
The core takeaway for you listening is really grappling with those trade-offs we discussed: control versus simplicity, and where serverless fits with its unique cost and scaling model. Choosing wisely helps you build better, more efficient solutions.
So as you think about your next project, or even your current ones, maybe ask yourself,
Yeah.
with these adaptable Azure Compute options available, how could you rethink what's possible? What new doors open up when the infrastructure itself isn't a rigid barrier, but a flexible, powerful resource just waiting for you to harness it?